You surface from the underground at Piccadilly Circus.
Mind the gap.
Making your way through the glittering lights of London's West End, you take a turn down a quaint-looking street into the notorious neighborhood of Soho. The lights are dimming, the crowd is buzzing, and you've just tuned in to the best seat in the house. Welcome to The Big Smoke, a variety show podcast. I'm Kevin Bennett, and I'll be your guide through this experience of comedy, conversation, and community. Today, we're flying into the surprisingly fascinating world of wasps. From Shakespeare and Aristotle to spider hunters, paper architects, and some of nature's most misunderstood creatures. I sit down with Professor Seirian Sumner, author of Endless Forms, Why We Should Love Wasps. Together, we explore the remarkable lives of wasps, uncovering the stories, myths, and misconceptions that have shaped our view of them. From parasitoid wasps and cockroach hunters to the surprising ways wasps help both ecosystems and humans. This conversation just might change the way you see the pests buzzing around your picnic table. We're also trying something new, bringing you episodes every single week. So stay tuned next Thursday for the next stop on Kate Sharp's Blue Plaque Tour and a special tale from the Mahabharata told by Scott Brooksbank in Stories You Haven't Heard. But for now, let's tune in. Conversation. Seirian Sumner is a professor of behavioural ecology at University College London, where she studies the ecology and evolution of social insects. She has published more than 80 scientific papers, received numerous awards for her research, and is co-founder of the citizen science initiative, the Big Wasp Survey. Endless Forms, Why We Should Love Wasps, is her first book for a general audience. So, let's brave the sting and say hello to Seirian. Well, thank you for being here. Welcome to The Big Smoke.
Thank you for having me. It's
nice
a delight
to meet
to be
you.
here.
I'm really excited to talk to you today. We're talking all about wasps. You know, a topic that one of the people that we just bumped into before we started recording sort of wince at. But I was interested in, I was thinking of the way to start that might be really fascinating is I love talking to people on this show who have really specific passions. But what excites me even more is when people have passions for something that the kind of greater society dislike or are not interested in or don't understand for whatever reason. But you spent a long time, over 20, 25 years, spreading the word, fighting the good fight. I've heard, other interviews where you've talked about doing kind of town hall meetings and different things like this where you're talking to different groups about wasps. What clicked in the beginning in your journey of studying wasps to make you want to pursue this with such a passion and to make you want to spread the word when I can imagine it's a difficult fight?
You're absolutely right. And I guess the reason I got into wasps was a total accident.
Okay.
I was just like everyone else. I hated wasps. I hated insects, actually. Well, not hate, but I wasn't fond of them.
Yeah.
But I was really interested in behaviour.
Okay.
And particularly interactions amongst animals. I was really inspired by David Attenborough. And it's such a cliche, but actually he had a really important impact on my direction of my life. And I accidentally fell into studying wasps and didn't really like them. Kind of got used to people saying, oh, why don't you study bees? They're much nicer. Why are you studying wasps? And it took me at least till the end of my PhD, which was my first introduction to wasps, to realise that actually these are the underdogs of the insect world. And no one is sticking up for them. And I like to stick up for the underdog. I like to look out for the people, the facets of life that don't always end up on top. And I sort of thought, I've got a mission here. At first my mission was simply to help fill the scientific gaps regarding wasps. So not only do the public not like wasps, but the scientists also don't like wasps. And there are about 40 times more bee papers than there are about wasps on ecology. And so I thought, well, actually, I've got to help fill that gap. And also, it wasn't a very busy area. So after working on wasps for a bit for my PhD, I then studied ants for a couple of years, which was fun. I got to go to Panama and study leaf-cutting ants, which are very cool. But after that, I realised that everyone is studying ants and it's a little bit too mainstream for me. And so I went back to the wasps, which less busy, less competition, and just, a world that no one else was interested in.
Was there something about the wasp specifically that you thought, nobody knows this, I really want to, I'm sure there were many things, but in those early discoveries of, okay, this is going to be the thing that I'm going to, dedicate some time, my life to, was there something specific that you wanted people to understand at that time?
Not really. I mean, I guess it was social behaviour that I was studying at the time. And a lot of people were studying social behaviour of ants and also bees, particularly honeybees and bumblebees, and less so wasps. So I think that those were the research questions that I came into the wasp world to study. But I think the turning point for me in realising that I am now becoming a cheerleader, or was going to become a cheerleader for wasps, was when I started to give more sort of public talks to members of the public. So they might be Women's Institute talks or natural history societies or gardening societies, really small kids, groups of kids. And I'd be waxing lyrical about how amazing the social life of wasps was. And then the audience would be sort of slightly nodding, oh yeah, maybe she's got a point, but I'm really not buying this. And then I would just slip in the odd slide at the end of my presentation about, and wasps might be really important as pollinators and pest controllers. And suddenly the audience would wake up. And that's when I realised that, if I want to change people's hearts and minds about wasps, I need to tell them why wasps matter to them and not just talk about sociality, because that was a very niche thing. And that actually, it was the feedback from the audiences over time that made me also widen my research area into not just social evolution and behaviour, but also the ecosystems services of wasps and what they do. And of course, there's a fantastic model and track record to follow in the bee world. And I would say that over the last 20 or 30 years, scientists have helped change the narrative for bees, particularly in how the public regard them. When I was a child, you couldn't buy bee hotels, for example. Right. And now you're positively tripping over them when you go into garden centres. And I think that's partly because there's been such a lot of research into the importance of bees as pollinators. And also then that is reported in the media, which then reaches the masses. So I figured that actually that's the model I need to try and replicate. And there's surprisingly little known or researched about the role of wasps in the environment. It's all focused on either pest control or, social behaviour actually is quite well studied in some of the societies of wasps. So, so that's kind of where I've been going. And what I really enjoy is the way that doing science outreach and communication feeds back into my research agendas. And maybe I'm just easy to be influenced. I don't know. But when I see really people's ears prick up and they go, I say, actually, you care about that. You care about what wasps do in your back garden. Okay, I'm gonna see what we can find out more about that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay, so there's lots of stuff I want to ask through that response, but I want to start with, I read your book and it's fascinating, but and also really engaging to read. And near the beginning, you talk about the myths and the stories around wasps that have been going on for centuries, from the Bible to Shakespeare to, Aristotle. There's references to wasps that create this negative narrative. Is there one that stands out to you, whether that's your favorite or maybe it's the one that you think has contributed the most to this negative view? I personally, from a theater background, I like the "if I be waspish, best beware my sting" from Taming of the Shrew reference that's in there. But is there anyone that stands out the most to you that you think has influenced our at least Western kind of narrative of wasps as these evil things?
I don't know whether there's one particular narrative, but I would say that the one that potentially has had the most long-lasting impact is Aristotle. So Aristotle wrote, he was the first published entomologist. So he wrote over 2,000 years ago. Mostly he wrote about honeybees and humans, but he also wrote about wasps a little bit. And the little bit that he did write about wasps was remarkably correct to this day. So his observations were quite insightful, and his understanding of the life cycle of the wasps. And when I say the wasps, I mean the wasps that he was watching, which were the yellow jacket wasps that most people know of as wasps that bother them at picnics. And he particularly compares them to bees, and he says that there is nothing divine about them, as there are with the bees. And that is an often quoted narrative, I think, that has shaped the way that scientists and scholars of Aristotle have then taken on that narrative. But you're also right that the negative stories about wasps are deeply ingrained into our culture. Wherever actually, we can come back to that. Our culture, meaning a Western culture. But through most religious texts, you can find some narrative which depicts wasps as the evildoers. So, for example, I think in the Bible, there's at least 4 times that God will send wasps, which he calls hornets, which are one particular genus of wasp, to punish the unbelievers. And there's this lovely Senegalese creation story, actually, which I like to use as an example as well of how it's not just, the sort of the Western depiction of Christianity, but it's also other creation stories where the God is creating all of the creatures on earth, and he says to all the insects to hide. He's created the insects, and he says, "Hide your eyes, because I'm now going to create whatever it is he's going to do next." And all the insects dutifully cover their eyes, except the wasp, who peeks through with her tarsi, and to watch what he's doing. And to punish her, he pinches her in the waist, which of course is the wasp waist, which is actually, a true anatomical evolutionary innovation. He pinches her around the waist such that she cannot bear live young. And then the story is that those wasps are then doomed to not producing offspring themselves, but instead creating their offspring from other organisms, and so particularly caterpillars. So this comes from the observation in Senegal and this part of the world where they don't have the yellow jackets that we have in big wasp colonies, but they have lots of these wasps that build tiny mud nests, the solitary wasps, and they will build a little pot and put a caterpillar in it and seal it up. So the people will have observed that, and they will have observed a wasp with her pinched waist, her lovely thin waist, make this pot, put the caterpillars in, seal it up and say goodbye. And then out of that pot comes a wasp. And so obviously the wasp has laid an egg on those caterpillars, and then the larva of the wasp has eaten the caterpillars, the paralysed caterpillars, and then pupated and then emerged as a wasp. So it's their interpretation of what a wasp is doing. So I kind of like that story.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a bit more of a positive slant than some of these. Because, for example, I just wanted to point out love this quote in the book. You do reference a film called The Wasp Woman, and in the film it says a woman overdoses on anti-aging formula. This is from 1959. A woman overdoses on anti-aging formula made from the royal jelly of a queen wasp, and at night she transforms into a murderous wasp-like creature who devours mostly men. And on the poster, which you have in the book, it says, "The Wasp Woman, a beautiful woman by day, a lusting queen wasp by night."
I know, isn't it great? I know, I love it. You have to watch that movie. It's so cardboard cut out. It's like you can almost see the scenery kind of waft. As a theatre guy, you'd love this.
Yeah.
It's like you could see it sort of waving in the background as she wanders past, and it's very it's hilarious. It really is so hilarious.
Funny. But you mentioned Aristotle, and one of the things that I think is worth pointing out that is such a creative approach to a book like this is there is a whole section called Dinner with Aristotle that is very, very entertaining. You say, if I could invite one person back from the grave to have dinner with me, it would be Aristotle. And I'm just going to read this little first section, if it's all right with you, and hear maybe your response to it. So this is the beginning from your book of the section Dinner with Aristotle. I take measure of my dinner guest. He's a willowy, good-looking man, despite being more than 2,400 years old. His clothes are a little drab by today's standard, but no doubt would have been flamboyant in ancient Greece, ensuring that he stood out from the crowd. I had heard that Aristotle might have been a little vain, that he was always on trend with his hairstyle. On another day, he might have sported clusters of well-ordered curls around his temple, but for dinner tonight, he wears it long, in cascades of blonde curls. He narrows his eyes as he peers at me over sharp cheekbones. He is perplexed. Why am I so interested in wasps? Do I not mind their stings? After all, wasps are, quote, all with sting and stronger than bees, and their wound is more painful and proportionately bigger than bees, end quote. It seems the reputation of wasps has changed little over the last millennia. Where to start? So thus begins your dinner with Aristotle. Why did you decide to frame it in that way and have this, other than it being really entertaining, way of communicating as if you were talking to Aristotle?
So that chapter is all about comparing the yellow jacket wasp with the honeybee. And the honeybee is one of the best studied insects. And we also have many millennia long relationships with bees, of course, honeybees as providers of honey and wax and, everything. So it was a good place to start. And my point of the chapter is to show that the yellow jacket has everything that is as incredible about the honeybee. So if you think the honeybee is cool and the behavior is astonishing and the waggle dance is amazing and how useful and important they are, the wasps do that as well. So that was how the chapter was originally written. And my biggest fear when I was writing the book is that the reader might be bored. And so that chapter's quite late in the book. I probably should have put it a bit earlier on reflection. And I just thought, I don't know, I'd written the chapter, I felt it was a bit dry. I felt, it was a very comparative of this is what the honeybees do. Oh, the wasps do this as well. And it was a little bit kind of like, I felt, and also there's so little that we know about the yellow jacket wasps in relation to the behaviours that the honeybees show. And so I was sort of lacking, it was quite unbalanced. So I felt it needed something else in it. So I remember the day that I started writing it, I thought, this is crazy. I rewrote the chapter with Aristotle as my dinner guest. And I was so worried that it was a bit too crazy. I asked my husband to have a quick look at it and he said, "Oh, I think it's all right." And then I just quickly checked in with my editor and she's like, "No, this is great. We love it." So I that was the best. I loved writing that chapter. It was so much fun. But interestingly, it wasn't a chat. It's a very Marmite chapter. In the response to my book. Scientists who read my book don't expect a chapter like that. Yeah. It's a little bit too frivolous, I think, for many of them. Interesting. And also, I'm no philosopher. I'm no expert on Aristotle. What I know about Aristotle is in that chapter. So I did a little bit of research into what he might have been like as a person and stuff. So there's a lot of artistic license that's taken there. Some of the feedback, I remember reading one review was, Aristotle would never have had dinner with a woman. It's like, oh, for God's sake.
Right. Oh my God.
If that's the worst thing about my book,
that's the measuring stick of that chapter. That's crazy.
So the scientists don't like it, but it's often when people email me to say that they like my book. Obviously, they don't email me to tell me they don't like my book. But those who do email me to tell me they like my book, which is really lovely, they always mention that chapter. And I think for the lay reader, it's a bit of a light relief as well, because earlier on in the book, it gets a bit heavy in the science probably at times.
There are very entertaining sections earlier as well. But I think it's interesting because it's interesting to hear that scientists don't like that, because sometimes I feel like it's a bit of because it's more accessible. It's like, so do you want it to be not accessible, because I think there's still lots of facts and science within that in the framework of you teaching Aristotle. And it also happens to be very entertaining and funny, because you're painting a picture, you're telling a story of this imagined situation and how he's reacting and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a brilliant way to get people to it certainly engage me, and those facts wouldn't be something I would engage in if it was just written out.
That's what I was thinking. And actually, I think my eldest child at the time, when I was writing the book, was maybe 15, 16. He wasn't great at reading. I mean, he could read, obviously, but he didn't read books for pleasure much at that time. And I remember giving him that chapter to read, and he actually really enjoyed it. So he found it accessible. So I thought, okay, that's good. You know, it might not be right for everybody, but if it brings in a reader who wouldn't normally want to read that kind of information, then I think that's good. The other thing I sort of like about I was thinking when I was writing that chapter is that the whole narrative of the book is, I know you don't like wasps, and I want to persuade you to like wasps. And so within that chapter, I do it for Aristotle.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of,
it's
a
brilliant.
book within a book.
I love it. Let's dig into some specifics about the fascinating and dramatic world of wasps and also unique species. So one of the things I like to do in this podcast when there's a topic that I am certainly obviously not an expert on, but if there's someone in my life, friend, family, whoever, that might have some connection to the topic, I'll often ask them, this is the person I'm interviewing. What would you ask? Do you have a question? And so I have a cousin who is in his 20s now, but I remember when he was very little, he had this obsession with bugs and insects. And I remember going over to their house when he was, 6 years old or whatever. And he had all these insects that he'd collected from the backyard and all of this stuff. Now, his line of work has nothing to do with this now. And this is over like 20 years later. And I thought, well, it would be funny to see what kind of question he might ask. It might be completely, who knows? So, and then he asked to me a very interesting question. So this is my cousin Eric's question for you. I'd love to hear your response. So he says, I am fascinated and pretty grossed out by parasitoid wasps, and I'm wondering how this evolutionary strategy has developed and become successful for wasps, as it seems like in most examples, the host animal dies as a function of the wasp offspring maturing. Compared with other typical parasites, we might think of where the host animal can live a mostly complete life while the parasite is inside them. You'd think that parasitic wasps would run out of hosts pretty quickly if they went unchecked. I have to say I was delighted at the specificity of this question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, I'd put
but
that
what
up
do you
there.
think?
I think that's a first-class university ask you a question.
Okay.
Very good point. So one thing that he has hit the nail on the head with is the difference between a parasite and a parasitoid.
Okay, tell us what the difference is then.
So parasites don't always kill their hosts. Parasitoids always kill their hosts. And so it's also worth mentioning there that another thing that he's hit on is the parasitoids are the most speciose group of wasps. So there are over 100,000 species of wasps.
Wow.
At least 70,000 of them, so over 70%, are parasitoids.
Okay.
And these are the described species of wasps. It's only the other 30,000 or so that have stings. So parasitoids don't have stings. Instead, they have an ovipositor, which is an egg-laying sheath that they will use to lay their egg on or in their host caterpillar or beetle larva or whatever it is they're parasitizing. And so the parasitoids are actually arguably one of the most fascinating and difficult to explain, really, how and why they've been so incredibly successful. But there are some ideas on why that might be so. So when the parasitoids evolved, they evolved from the sawflies or horntails or wood wasps, as they're called. And those insects didn't have this thin wasp waist, the same one that the Senegalese creation story.
Waist.
The cinched waist, So when parasitoid wasps are defined by the evolution of this cinched waist, and also the fact that they lay their eggs on prey rather than plants. So the sawflies are all almost all plant eaters. So their larvae they'll lay their egg on a plant and it'll eat the plant when it hatches as a larva. So the parasitoids, by having this very thin waist, it meant that they can get their abdomen into places that they wouldn't have been able to if their waist had remained dumpy.
So they're more flexible.
Exactly, yeah. So that might be why they've been able to exploit a huge diversity of niches and also are different types of prey, different types of insects that they lay their eggs in hidden places within plants or within, in the ground. So that's possibly one reason for their success. They've also got incredible sensory evolution. So some of them can use their antenna to detect the vibrations of a caterpillar hidden inside the bark of a tree. Or below the ground. And they can detect where it is, and then they use their ovipositor to drill into the tree and lay their egg exactly in the right place on the host. So it's truly absolutely incredible. Your cousin is right that the wasp larva will completely consume the host, but it's very carefully orchestrated such that it always has enough of the host left. Sometimes the host continues developing. So if it's a caterpillar, it'll continue growing whilst the wasp larva is eating it from the inside out. Other times it will completely retard the development. But in all cases, the host will remain alive long enough for the larva to pupate. And once it's pupated, it doesn't need any more nourishment. It's got everything it needs, and it undergoes metamorphosis and then emerges as a beautiful wasp.
And the host is then dead?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And often you just see like mouth parts left.
Yeah.
So they are amazing and actually really quite understudied as well. And I think, parasitoid research... So I've only recently got into parasitoids, actually. In fact, writing my book, I had to learn about parasitoids because mostly I've worked on the stinging wasps. But in the last...
So, for example, sorry to interrupt, the wasps that I would be used to at the picnic is not this.
No, exactly. Okay. No, and the parasitoids are solitary.
Oh,
so
okay,
they only live on their own. In fact, only about less than 1% of wasp species are social.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this is why we are totally blinded and biased by our perceptions of wasps, because most people only think of a wasp as the thing that comes to your picnics and bothers you. Most people don't even know when they see a parasitoid wasp because it looks like a tiny little black fly on their windows. They think it's a fly. And even actually, you get those sort of clouds of insects that hover around over your head sometimes in the summer. Have you had that?
Yeah.
So often they're flies, and then what they're doing is they're lecking. It's a group of males, like using you as a landmark.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, why are they above my head?
Yeah, it's just because you're a landmark.
I see. Okay.
And last summer, I always thought they were flies. Last summer, I happened to have my insect net with me when I had a pile of them on top of my head, and I whipped my net over my head to catch some. And lo and behold, they were parasitoid wasps.
Oh.
And it was utterly amazing.
Could you tell right away, or did you have to
I could tell right away that they were parasitoid wasps.
Wow.
And there is, I mentioned it to my good friend who happens to be the world expert on parasitoid wasps, Gavin Broad at the Natural History Museum. And he confirmed the species, can't remember what it is now.
Wow.
And he also directed me to one paper from the early 1900s, where someone had reported that these parasitoids lek. So that was really cool, but people aren't studying this kind of thing. Most of parasitoid research is into taxonomy. And there's a reason for that because, as your cousin correctly noted, these parasitoids can have a big impact on other insect populations. So they're really important for regulating populations of caterpillars and beetles. Okay. So in that respect, some of the best studied parasitoid wasps are biocontrol agents, and they're actually farmed in factories in Brazil, for example, and released into the fields using drones to help control pests. So some aspects of parasitoid biology are really well known, but it's a fraction of species. It's like a handful of species.
And I guess in some ways that's what you're saying is kind of the answer to him wondering about the evolutionary strategy behind, why they don't run out of hosts or whatever. It's a, how did you say, biocontrol?
I think it's a prime example of an apex predator. So the apex predator, whether it's a wolf, a golden eagle, or, a lion, wasps are apex predators. And so they regulate the populations of the organisms below them in the trophic level, in the food chain. But likewise, once that food supply runs out, that will then regulate the populations of
Makes
that
sense.
apex predator.
Is in early on in the book, you say it was, I'm wondering if this is related to this. It was parasitic, I'm not going to pronounce this right,
Echumonids,
wasps that caused Charles Darwin to question the omnipotence of God and the story of creation. In a letter to the botanist Asa Gray in 1860, Darwin wrote, "I cannot persuade myself that a beneficent and omnipotent God would have designedly created the," how do I say that?
Echumonids.
Echumenids with the expressed intention of their feeding within the living bodies of caterpillars. So is that what he's referring to?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Interesting.
Echumonid wasps were one of these things that he's like, there cannot have been a God who created every organism, and why would they ever create something so horrific as this? And I one of the things I use the Echumonid wasp, the parasitoid wasp for in my kind of cheerleading for wasps is when I have an audience of children, because children love the gruesome, and so the ways that they eat their prey, their host from the inside out. The kids love it; they absolutely love it.
It's very it's a good
Horror
and
movie
I wanted to
style
bring up
alien.
the Darwin quote as well, because the title of your book is from Darwin, right?
Indeed,
Forms.
Endless Forms. Yes.
So I thought that was a nice
Endless
connection.
Forms.
Speaking of gruesome, there's some fascinating types of wasps and stories that you tell. I'd love to hear one or two of them. The one that stood out to me the most that I thought was hilarious and kind of terrifying is the cockroach hunting. Cockroach on a leash.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that works and what the story is of that?
Sure. This is the emerald jewel wasp.
Okay.
And she's very, very beautiful. She's sort of greeny turquoise iridescent.
And where is she found?
She is found
Not here in the
not
UK.
here,
Okay.
no, but you can find them in London Zoo.
Ooh,
I think
okay.
they have some in the invertebrate house, at least they used to.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Good
if
to
you want
know.
to check some out there.
Yeah.
They are actually quite spectacular because they're quite small. They're sort of 0.5 centimetre in length or so. And they hunt cockroaches. But a cockroach can get to be quite big.
Yeah.
And so how do they deal with this? Well, they deal with it by using their venom in a very clever way. So they will first administer a sting. When they find the cockroach, they'll quickly stab a sting into its thorax, which is the main body torso area, to stop the cockroach running off. And that kind of slows it down a bit and stops it flailing around. And then she will insert her sting into the brain of through the head into the brain of the cockroach and inject neurotoxins.
So sorry. The first sting, what does that do?
It just slows it down.
It just slows it down.
Like,
Okay.
stop wriggling.
Okay.
I need to get. It's like
In order to get
the brain
precise
surgeon
brain.
needs you to sit still.
So it's sort of like the anesthetic. Okay, I'm slowing down. Now you can operate on me.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then she will inject a neurotoxin into the brain. But unlike most parasitic wasps, so who will or hunting wasps that will paralyze their prey, she can't carry it to her nest, and so she needs it to be mobile. And so the neurotoxin will slow it down. The cockroach can still walk, but it doesn't have any free will. And so she then grabs it by its antenna and literally leads it to its underground tomb. So she walks it like a well-trained poodle, I think I say in the book, to its tomb. And it's paralyzed. It's alive. It's perfectly preserved. And she puts it in the ground, lays an egg on it, and seals it up. And then, and this is what all of these.
So wild.
I know. And
the movie of this in my mind is so wild. Sorry, go
There
on.
are so many different ways in which wasps assassinate their prey in a very slow, beautiful, painless way.
Oh my gosh.
Some of them there's another one of my favourites where they lay their eggs on a spider, which
the spider
don't
hunter.
put into the ground, actually. It's quite a rare, normally they would put them in the ground or in
Put the
a
spider
burrow.
in the ground.
Yeah, but they don't bury them. Instead, that she will, I think it's Homonitus, she lays her eggs on the abdomen of a pregnant spider. So a spider with developed eggs, so she can detect.
Right, okay.
And you think about that, there's much more nutrition in that, so that's a
Yeah.
good place to lay your egg. And the spider carries on her life. Meanwhile, the wasp egg hatches into a cute little baby wasp larva and then munches through the abdomen of the spider. And the spider's continuing to carry on feeding and everything, doing her thing.
Wow.
And then eventually, with her behind being eaten off, eventually the wasp larva will pupate, and all that's left is the mandibles and a few bits of chitin.
What's the mandibles, sorry?
Oh, sorry, the mouth parts.
Oh, the mouth parts.
The mouth parts and the chitin, which is the exoskeleton
Okay.
of the spider. So yeah, I mean that's
Wow.
one of my favourite stories as
It's
well.
wild. I mean, I also just, back to the cockroach, this thing of it being kind of, what's it called, in like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or whatever, when they, oh God, I've forgotten the term, where they don't do it obviously nowadays, but you would almost ruin a part of somebody's brain and they'd become kind of a vegetable.
lobotomy.
It's like a lobotomy for the cockroach.
Yeah.
And then it's just sort of come this way.
Yeah,
This way.
absolutely.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the cool and also important things that wasps can do. And I know some of this is not researched as much as it maybe should, but you talk about, for example, there's an embalming wasp that has antibiotic properties in it. Can you tell us a little bit about that and sort of the positive things that how wasps can potentially benefit, I guess, us as humans?
Yeah, so the story of the bee wolf is, I think, the one you're referring to here. So they, again, are a solitary wasp. So they with a sting and venom. So they will hunt the prey. And the prey, in this case, is a bee, as the name is the bee wolf, the wolf of bees. So she hunts honeybees. She'll bring them back to a burrow that she's dug. And it's important to remember that if you bury things in the ground, they're going to be surrounded by all sorts of microorganisms, fungi, viruses, bacteria, that are also going to want to feed on that prey. But what you, as a wasp, wants to do is to keep that prey clean and safe and sterile, a beautiful, pristine living larder for your offspring to feed on. And so the bee wolf is a rare example of a really well-studied solitary wasp, where these scientists in Germany have done some tremendous work and unpacked the medicinal cabinet that is within this this bee wolf. So what she does is she'll bring the bee back to her burrow. She will then lick it all over, embalm it, creating a waterproof cover to it. And that's like a first line of defense against the elements. She'll put it in the ground, and then from her antenna, she will exude a bacteria, Streptomyces, which produces streptomycin, which, along with penicillin, is one of the most important antibiotics that we use in medicine. So these wasps have this symbiotic relationship with this bacteria.
Wow.
They put this bacteria into the embalmed bee capsule, and then she'll lay the egg. And then the egg actually gives off toxic farts of a fungicide, nitrous oxide, which is really important because it takes a German scientist to work this out, right? They're so meticulous. So the egg gives off this fungicide, which for a few days before the egg hatches, keeps the capsule disease-free. And then once the larva has hatched from the egg, then the larva will spread the antibiotic around the bee.
Right.
And that keeps it all nice and disease-free. Isn't that amazing? And that's a really common species of wasp in the UK. And most people wouldn't even notice it.
Well, and maybe this is an obvious dumb question, but in terms of the antibiotic that the wasp is using, which is the same as one that we use, we obviously didn't get it from the wasp.
No, it's a very common bacteria.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that they produce, though, naturally, obviously.
The wasps don't produce it. They have a symbiotic relationship with the bacteria, which is existing in the environment. Yeah.
Wow.
And it just begs the question of, what are those other 30,000 species of solitary wasps that bury their prey in the ground or in a tree trunk? What antibiotics are they using? What kind of antivirals? How are they keeping it disease-free? So there's so little research into the medicinal properties of wasps. I think that's really super exciting. And an area actually that we're getting into now by looking at the venom of solitary wasps and seeing what kind of medicinal properties they have within them.
Fascinating. Okay, I want to make sure that we touch on something that I'm sure is the most common thing that you get asked about, but I have to because, of course, anyone that I've said I'm talking to a wasp expert talks about being stung or talks about how they hate them at the picnic and all that kind of thing. So let's talk a little bit about specifically the wasps that we might see at a picnic, whether it be here or back home for me in Canada. How can I convince my family and friends not to just kill them immediately? I mean, that's my question. Let's talk a little bit about those wasps that we all know. And
yeah, so those are the yellow jackets, which are the subject of my Aristotle chapter.
Yeah.
So you know about those now. You're right. That is the commonest question I get. So why do they bother us at picnics? What do we do?
Yeah.
So wasps will come to your picnic purely because, not to annoy you as a person, despite what you think. The number of times
they don't care about you that much.
Yeah, I know. It's not about you.
Yeah, exactly.
The number of times people say to me, "Oh, it's out to get me. It's eyeing me up."
People
What's
also
to
say
do?"
they remember your face. They're like, I killed one before, so they remember my face or whatever.
So there is a little bit of scientific fact behind that because wasps can recognize human faces. They can be trained.
Sure.
But the only reason that they can do that is because they're really good at using landmarks. So on your face, we have landmarks. That's what we use. I use, landmarks of where your eyes are in relation to your nose and so on. And the wasps do the same thing. And the reason why they look like they're eyeing you up and they're kind of zigzagging in front of you is because they are literally checking you out as a landmark. They're not looking at you as a source of food or where am I going to sting them. So they come to your picnic, you just happen to be there, there's food, that's what they're after. And they might be after the protein at your barbecue, so it might be your sausage meat or chicken or hummus, or they might be after something sweeter like jam or lemonade or your sugary drink. What they go for will depend on the time in the season and also what else is going on in the natural environment, so what other resources are available and also what's going on in the nest. But what we do know is that the adult, we don't really understand what determines when they go for protein or sugar.
Okay.
But what we do know is that when the wasps are hunting, they're hunting the protein, the prey, to feed to the larvae. The adults themselves are vegetarians.
Oh, okay.
So they do not eat the prey. They will chew it up, take it back to the nest, feed it to the hungry larvae, and then the larvae in the nest kind of act as a social stomach. They digest the protein in the larvae, and then they will give the adults a sugary treat. So they will exude this little bubble of liquids, and the adults will take that, and that is rich in carbohydrates. And so that is an important source. The larvae are an important source of food for the adults. But adults also need to get their sugar from elsewhere as well. And they'll get that usually from flowers. So the same way that bees visit flowers for sugar, for nectar and carbohydrates, wasps do that as well, which means that they also pollinate. But the reason they come to your picnic might be because your sugary jam or cake, whatever it is a better source of sugar or easier to find than the flowers that are around you. Or that the particularly the yellow jackets, which will go for carrion, they'll go for dead meat. That's why they come to your barbecue. And you won't find other species of wasps, like the solitary wasp would never come to your barbecue for meat. They might come for a bit of sugar, but very rarely. So it's always the yellow jackets that come to your picnic. So if they arrive at your picnic, my top tip to you is to just sit still. Don't flap around, because then you are perceived as a threat, as a predator, and you might therefore get stung. That's when people get stung. But if you just sit still, see what she wants. So she might zigzag in front of your face for a bit, which is a bit intimidating, but just stay still. And then once she's worked out what kind of landmark you are, then she'll be looking for her food on your plate. See what she wants, and if it's a little bit of chicken, let her have it. Give her a wasp offering. She'll just take a little cut out of it. And you can get so close to them when they're busy getting their food. You can get really nice pictures on your phone from them. You can get really close and see their mandibles, their mouth parts chewing the bits of food off. So she'll go off back to the nest, and then she may well come back. She won't bring a huge number of wasps with her because unlike honeybees, they don't recruit very well.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
They recruit a little bit, but not nearly as well as honeybees. But what does attract wasps to food is the presence of other wasps. So if you've got a few wasps on a plate of food, you're more likely to have more wasps come along. So I've seen wasp offerings done brilliantly in Italy, for example. We were in Venice on holiday and having pizza outside with the kids, and there were lots of wasps around, but the waiters had put a pile of cooked ham on a table just a metre or so away from where we were. It was covered in wasps, like hundreds of wasps on that ham. And we ate our pizzas not being remotely bothered.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
and then by
because
the
they
time
saw all the other wasps as well.
Yeah, they all went to the ham. And then by the time we'd finished our pizzas, all the ham had gone. It was incredible. Honestly, they were very busy. And then the wasps started to bother people.
Sure.
So just using a simple lure like that really works.
Well, that's a good idea. I think that's what we're going to try at the lake this summer is put a wasp offering out and see if they, because it's usually in Pacific Northwest, it's maybe it's the same here in the height of sort of August when we're having barbecues and things.
It's the August, it's the juxtaposition of the time, at least in the UK, when everyone's making the most of the last nice days of the summer, and also the time in the wasp colonies life cycle when there are lots of larvae that have pupated, and so there'll be fewer larvae potentially which are giving sugary treats to the workers, but there's a large number of workers around, and so there's maybe some kind of misbalance there.
So put out a wasp offering this summer, if you can, if you're for anyone listening. Just a couple more questions. I've heard you speak about cultures that have different relationships with wasps, whether that be in their own mythology and storytelling that's maybe has a more positive angle, or just the way that they interact with wasps now. Are there any that stand out to you that you could share with us that, I mean, it's useful. We talked about the sort of Western viewpoint of wasps, and I was fascinated to hear about, for example, in India, they've got a whole different relationship to wasps. I heard you speak about in another interview. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about any other cultures that have a different relationship to wasps that maybe we could learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to confess that indeed, when I wrote my book, I didn't have these experiences with these communities around the world who have this very positive relationship. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say very, it depends, but they do definitely have a working relationship with wasps and a tolerance for them. And I think, that the wasps as a nuisance narrative is quite a Western view.
Yeah.
In India, so I was recently in Nagaland, which is the northeastern part of India, quite a remote area, very traditional ways of life there, indigenous tribal communities. And so one of my PhD students, Femi Benny, is from India. And so she'd been working with these in that area of India prior to her PhD, and she'd become aware and learnt about their wasp keeping traditions. And so her PhD is now on this sort of the socio-ecological angle of wasp keeping in Nagaland. So it was a great privilege to go to Nagaland and meet the people who were farming these wasps, and the tremendous insights that they have from their traditional ecological knowledge, which enables them to make the most of these wasps and actually farm them. This includes the Vespa mandarinia, which is called the murder hornet in the US.
Talk about a narrative behind something.
Right, exactly.
The murder hornet.
Yeah, it's the giant Asian hornet. It's from Asia. Most insects, often outside of their native zones, become problematic as invasive species. And Vespa mandarinia is one such species in the US that has, outcompetes native species, and it is also quite a scary looking insect. It's very large. And there's been a big effort in the US to control those populations. I think they've got on top of it now. But nonetheless, the media like to call it the murder hornet, and that is kind of stuck now. Everyone refers to it as the murder hornet. In India, they farm the murder hornet for the food. And actually, it is the most highly regarded of the insects, of the wasps that are farmed out there. So there's many species of wasps that they farm, but they will find their nest in the forest, and then they will relocate them, and they will nurture them, and at the end of the season, they will harvest the larvae, and they will eat them, or they'll sell them at market.
Wow.
And so their knowledge of the wasps is truly amazing. You know, they understand so much about the life history of the wasp. They understand so much about the even things like the personalities of the different species. So their traditional ecological knowledge is incredible. And we're hoping to help, you know, through Femi's work, we're hoping to really shine a light on that. So we're working with the people in Nagaland who are co-authors on the papers, such that their ways of working with wasps can be a beacon of light in what is otherwise a very negative wasp narrative in the rest of the world. And at a time when we need to be looking for more sustainable ways of finding protein. So don't eat beef, don't eat lamb. We should be eating insects. They're much more environmentally economical to farm, less space, less water. And they're very high in protein, low in fat. And in a social insect colony like a wasp nest, there's a lot of it as well. So there's a large amount of protein that you can get. So I think that's really opened my eyes to this. And actually, it's not just Nagaland. It's all, I mean, if you go across Asia, you'll find, you know, in Vietnam and Thailand and Japan, there are pockets of wasp keepers everywhere. So I think that's a really exciting and interesting way in which us in the West can learn from these people who perhaps don't share our narrative on how negative wasps are viewed.
Wow. Okay. I love that. Last question. Is there anything, you've been speaking about wasps for over 25 years now?
Yeah, I'm old.
Is there anything, no, but you're vast, you know, full of knowledge. Is there anything that you haven't been asked or that you wished that you were asked about wasps that you would like to share?
Oh, wow. That's a question.
Or even something that's the most recent thing. I mean, what's inspiring to me about you and your work is you still have this voracious passion for it, you know, for such a specific area. I think it could easily, I'm sure there were periods where it was wearing you down maybe, but I think...
I'm not sure there has been, actually.
That's amazing if there hasn't.
Because after my PhD in wasps, I took a little segue into ants, and then I have worked on bees as well. But then it was maybe 10 years or so ago, I realised that actually, you know what, I just need to be the wasp person here. And now I've had many PhD students graduate from my labs, and, you know, some of them are still studying wasps, and, you know, postdocs as well. I'm hoping that there's more of and there are actually, you know, a number of other wasp labs around the world who are also growing in popularity. So I think there is a growing interest in wasps. I think the thing that I'm really, you know, my dream is that we have a level of understanding about the role of wasps in both natural and farmed ecosystems and what they do, such that we can harness their predatory powers better for predation. So in the same way that we are going out of our way to make our gardens bee friendly, to putting bee hotels out, to planting the right flowers, encouraging bee populations. And I mean particularly not the honeybee, but all the solitary bees as well, which are really important pollinators. I'd like to see that we change that narrative as well for the wasps, and such that we've got the science base that people also want to put wasp hotels in their gardens and plant the right flowers for wasps and create the right habitats for wasps. But also in farmed environments, increasingly our work now is moving towards trying to work with farmers. So whether they're in lower and middle income countries where subsistence farmers are struggling with pest control because invasive species of pests are spreading much more quickly. Climate change is making it much harder for them to use more traditional ways of controlling pests. And so they're using pesticides which are incredibly toxic both to themselves and to the environment. And so we need more sustainable, affordable ways of pest control for them. And social wasps are really common in these areas, like India, but also Africa. We've been working on, and South America, so that the low-income subsistence farmers can learn how to work along and live alongside wasps. So I think that's why having the science to show that the wasps are effective, and we've done a little bit of that, but there's plenty more to do. And also having these stories of success where people can live alongside wasps like we have from Nagaland and India. I think putting those two together is really important. And understanding, of course, it's not just about the wasps in this narrative, it's also the people. And so understanding people's relationship with wasps and what is it that would help them understand wasps better and persuade them that actually it's worth their while working with wasps rather than working against them.
Well, I guess the other reason why you haven't gotten bored of it after so many years is there are endless forms, as the book is titled. So it just goes on and on. So definitely check out the book, Endless Forms. It's really, really entertaining and fascinating read. If you happen to be in London, you can see some wasp display of wasp nests at the, tell me if I'm getting this right, the Grant Zoological Museum.
Yeah, the Grant Museum of Zoology at UCL.
Which is free. You can wander in there. There's also lots on display. I went in there recently, and it's absolutely fascinating. So if you happen to be in London, you can wander through there. But it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Well, that's today's episode. If you'd like to participate in Seirian's Summer Citizen Science Project, Ham or Jam, you can find more information and get involved via the links in our show notes. And next time a wasp appears at your picnic, before you swat it away, take a moment to wonder where it's been, what it's doing, and the hidden world it belongs to. And we'll keep wondering here too, in the big smoke.